Hey everybody, here we are again with Century 21, the Harrelson Group. Abe Safa, Greg Harrelson here. And of course, this is our newest episode of the Myrtle Beach Real Estate TV. Thank you so much for the emails and the texts that we get sometimes, in sharing with us that you're finding value in these recordings. We do appreciate that. Abe, let's go ahead and get started. I don't want to, waste anyone's time. We were talking about, you brought it up, about forbearance, because forbearance has been a conversation that it was unique. I mean, unique in the sense that there was, 6 or 7 million people that were in the forbearance process. But can you give us an update? First off, can you share with us what forbearance is? And then go ahead and maybe give us an update as to where the numbers are right now. Okay,
yeah, so forbearance is where the lender is allowing mortgage holders to forego making mortgage payments. Now, depending on the lender, depending on what the owner negotiated with the lender, some lenders just kind of put it off for a few months, 3 months, 6 months, whatever it may be. But then once it expired, they expected the homeowner to go ahead and get caught up.
Yes.
Right. So which was a big concern for us. Like, okay, if somebody falls behind 6 months, are they going to be able to get caught up? Right. And then some homeowners were able to negotiate that, okay, we don't want to get caught up. We want it to just be added to the end of our loan. And then at some point, it's just our loan maturity goes longer. Right. Yeah. But the concern was not that we thought the market was going to crash or anything, but we saw all of a sudden that roughly 6 million people choose that option. Whether they were struggling with payments or not, 6 million people decided to not pay their mortgage. So we weren't sure where that was going to go. So it's something you and I were always looking ahead to see, okay, well, what could possibly impact our market and our clients, right? So the good news is, as of last week, that number went from 6 million to under 3 million people.
Wow.
So I think it's somewhere around 2.9 people, so 2.9 million people. So half the people got caught up. Some of them even paid off the house completely.
Now, right. When you say that, by the way, because the way that I'm hearing you said last week as if there was an event. Was there something that triggered a massive decrease within a short period of time? Like, for instance, the forbearance, maybe it expired for those that had applied for it?
No, that's a great question. No, as of last week is when the numbers were pulled.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a 3 million decrease in 1 week.
No. It didn't just get cut in half instantly. It was just, that was the number that was pulled last week. And it turned out to be roughly 2.9 million somewhere, give or take a few.
Yeah.
So to me, I thought that was phenomenal, right? Because we know the market's just been insanely hot. We know inventory keeps shrinking. So we were looking like, okay, what could possibly change this market? And that was one of the things you and I were concerned about. And frankly, now there's less concern.
Yeah. I was doing some studying on forbearance myself, and I was listening to an economist, and there's a few things that they shared that I thought were interesting that is also impacting this decrease. Number one, there was a lot of people actually sold their properties. Mm-hmm. And so they did a forbearance, applied for forbearance to give them a little bit of relief, but they had a lot of equity in their property. So they applied for forbearance, kind of like to defer their mortgage payments. They had a lot of equity in their property. They listed their property for sale. They sold their property. They paid off the mortgage, and they moved on and took their equity, and maybe they downsized or, just they moved on and took a different path. So that could, of course, there's that wouldn't be 3 million, people, but that does make up for a part of that. And then I was also, informed based on The Economist, there was a lot of people that when the news about, oh my gosh, banks are going to allow us to defer our payments for, and they're going to approve us for forbearance, practically no questions answered. There was a lot of people that really didn't need any help. They didn't need to defer their payments, but because COVID was in question, no one knew where this was going, how bad it was going to be. They said, you know what, why don't we go ahead and get approved for forbearance? But they got approved and they never missed their payments. They actually got approved and they kept making their payments. Mm-hmm. So now those people we're seeing now, maybe it expired and they've just canceled out their forbearance, or they didn't renew the forbearance. So now, of course, there are still people, like you said, there's still 3 million people that are in forbearance. And I would say as time goes on, whoever's continuing to stay in forbearance, they may be having a little bit more financial challenges. But I think all the people that got into the program that really didn't need it, they're getting out, or they've sold out of the program.
That's a great point. Yeah, a lot of people did sell. But now, just like a lot of those people had equity in their homes, across the country right now, people have pretty good equity in their homes, more so than ever before. So a lot of these people that are 3 million that are left, many of those are still in good financial condition where they've got pretty decent equity, where even if they were struggling financially currently, they have enough equity to be able to just sell the home. Doesn't necessarily going to translate into a short sale or foreclosures. So actually some economists out there I'm listening to saying that they feel like the likelihood of a high level of foreclosures is very low, even if the market did turn on us. Based on the level of equity people have in their homes right now.
Yeah.
So that's more good news, right?
That's very positive. That's very positive. It's not going to be positive for the inventory, as we talk about all the time, but it is positive because some of these people want to sell to and pull that equity and maybe buy a more modest home and lower their expenses. The challenge is that inventory levels are so low across the country. Sometimes they're having a hard time finding that next property to buy. So therefore they can't sell their property because then they would be homeless, or they would have to go into a rental, and that's not what their plans are. So interesting. We'll continue to keep our eyes and ears open and inform the public as to what we learn. Something else that I wanted to share is, I've been selling real estate in this market for many years, well over 20 years, and I've been through multiple swings and shifts of the economies and the local real estate markets. And and at every time, usually each shift requires a different strategy in order to successfully help our clients. So, like in a down market, there's certain things we have to do to help our clients. And in a market like we're doing in right now, extreme sellers market, there's certain things that we want to do to help our clients so they can take advantage of the opportunity. I guess in the down market, certain things we do to prevent them from, being damaged, prevent them from losing money if there's anything that we can do. And there are things we can do in those times. But I wrote down a few things that I just wanted to mention, because yes, it's an extreme seller's market. And yes, you're going to be able to get a higher price today than you probably could have got last year this time. But that's not the only unique advantage to selling right now. There's sellers because, I say unique advantage because we're negotiating things that in a normal market, we wouldn't be able to negotiate. For instance, I've got a contract right now that I'm representing the seller. We've got it under contract, and because there's very little inventory, we're able to negotiate the seller being able to stay in the home for 30 more days without having to pay rent. Mm-hmm. Now, I understand that's a way that we've attempted to do those things for years, but whenever there's less inventory, meaning there's less for the buyer to choose, then the buyer becomes more willing to cooperate and allow those types of terms. So that would be a unique advantage that may not always be around. Like if there was dozens and dozens of homes like the one that I just sold, then the seller made that request, or we made the request in the negotiation, the buyer may say no because the buyer has options. Right. So just because of price is a unique advantage, but being able to stay in the home after the closing to give yourself more time to move is also a unique advantage. Have you experienced any of this in any of your negotiations, whether it be that or a different unique advantage?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Right now, sellers have all the leverage, and it's all about leverage, right? So when buyers have options out there and they can go look at 5 different homes and be able to really actually choose any 2 or 3 that they really like, they have all the leverage at that point. So as representing a seller, we're more prone to kind of cave in on things. But right now, the way the market is for sellers, it's easy to say no.
Yeah.
to a buyer or to any request that a buyer wants, because guess what? We've got another buyer waiting in line to buy it if they don't. Yeah.
You know, one of the things that I've experienced, Dave, I don't know if you have, but buyers want properties so bad. Sometimes they'll write an offer and they're willing to pay a price. Let me just give a hypothetical. Let's just say the property is $250,000 and I got multiple offers. Well, then what happens, the buyers all get into this real competitive kind of mindset where they've got to win the property, right? Because they've lost two already. And so then all of a sudden I get somebody to make an offer of $260,000 and we get it under contract at $260,000. But I've seen, and this is where a good real estate agent's going to come in, I've seen where they've gotten buyer's remorse set in. Buyer's remorse set in 2 weeks later and they start wondering, gosh, did I overpay? The challenge is the other buyers are already gone now. So they've locked down the property at 260. The other buyers are gone and now they're like buyer's remorse. So one of the things that I've done to help my sellers is what would be common in our market is an earnest money. A buyer writes an offer and it seems to be common that the agent always puts in $1,000 as the earnest money. Now, I think that's too low, but that's common. It just seems like almost as somebody said that that's the standard and everyone follows that rule. I don't know how that happened, but that's how it's been for years. I've been negotiating and attempting every single time to get more earnest money. So they say 1,000, I say 5,000. Now, I don't get it every single time, but at just about every time I ask, I get more than they originally offered. So if they pay more and they get some sort of remorse later on down the road, the fact that I actually upped the earnest money in the negotiation causes that transaction to fall through because they have more money to lose in the event that they walk away. That is a unique advantage to today's market for sellers.
Absolutely, yeah. So more earnest money you can demand. I mean, even something as simple as the termite inspection.
Yep.
You know, most times buyers want the seller to pay for it. Nowadays, there's no need to. You could put that on the buyer.
Yeah.
You've got all the leverage as a seller right now.
Yeah, we've negotiated contracts where we know that they paid over full price, and we're questioning whether or not it's going to appraise. And we build into the contract that in the event that the property appraises for less than the agreed amount sales price on the contract, that the buyer will agree to bring an additional $5,000 to the table to make up the difference for the appraisal. Mm-hmm. Like I haven't been able to negotiate stuff like that for years, but that's the type of thing. So
it's that kind of market. Yeah, no question.
That kind of market. So Abe, I wanted to just share, like we say it's a seller's market. And most agents just talk about, well, that just means better price, better price. No, it's better price, it's better terms, it's fewer stipulations, it's fewer contingencies. There's so many advantages here. But I won't go ahead and speak on that too much more. Why don't you go ahead and let's walk us through the numbers.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to kind of warn you, there's not a whole lot of change as far as the numbers go. It's still, you know, every week I look at these and it's like, man, it's still super strong. I'm waiting for it to kind of slow down some. But it's just not happening, which is good. I'd like to see a little bit more inventory. I know there's a lot of buyers out there that are getting frustrated and they want to move into town. They just can't find a home. So I'd like to see a little bit more on the market for them. But, you know, single family homes on the market right now, 5,314 total homes, 2,740 are pending. That's a little over 51%. Same number as last week. It was 51.75. So no major change there. Looking at resale, that's what most people care about. 47% there. Last week it was 47.09, so almost identical numbers. Now, Greg, I went back in and I actually broke that number down a little bit more.
Okay.
I took out all the homes that are outside of what we consider the Grand Strand area. So I took, you know, Georgetown, Andrews, Cheraw, Calabash, Carolina Shores, Gallivan's Ferry. Took all of those out and pretty much left the Grand Strand, added Conway, the coast, and then Conway. And there's only 1,251 homes on the market right now in that whole area. So it's really, it sounds like a lot, 1,200 homes, but when you really break it down, you've got a buyer that you're looking for certain features in a home. Man, it's really slim pickings out there trying to find something that suits their needs.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, because 1,200 homes, we're talking about a large span of area.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of buyers.
Even all the way west to Conway as well, right?
Yeah, so a buyer doesn't come in and say, "Okay, I'm looking from Myrtle Beach to Cherry Grove all the way to the west side of Conway." They usually say, "I want just North Myrtle Beach," right? So, or just Myrtle Beach, or vice versa. Or they say, "I just want Carolina Forest." So then, when you start to really drill it down, and you say, "Here's how many properties are in Carolina Forest," then that becomes different. Matter of fact, I don't know if you want to consider this, Abe, but maybe you could give us a chart next week about here's how many properties, residential homes are for sale in Myrtle Beach. Here's how many residential, or no, here's how many residential properties are for sale between the east side of Conway, North Myrtle Beach, and Myrtle Beach. And then we could say, here's how many properties are for sale in Myrtle Beach. Here's how many are in North Myrtle Beach. And then we could go one layer deeper and say, here's how many are for sale in Carolina Forest. Because that's what buyers do. Buyers are from say there's a Northeast buyer from the Northeast or from North Carolina. They first start their search to say, I want to live in the Grand Strand. Then they say, well, no, I really only want to be in Myrtle Beach. Then they say, well, now I want to be in Myrtle Beach, but I only want to be in Carolina Forest. So it may sound like, okay, there's 1,200 properties available for them to see. But by the time they become a real buyer, they've narrowed it down to a section of a city. And now all of a sudden, there may only be 5 homes or 10 homes for sale that they have to choose from. And every buyer is just like that. There's no buyer that has 1,200 choices.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It doesn't work like that.
Yeah, and that's a great point. Yeah, I think we'll do that next week. And also keep in mind, this is all homes, right? So this ranges anywhere from a $79,000 manufactured home on leased land to a $2.4 million home on the oceanfront. So this is everything put together of 1,251 homes.
Yeah, interesting.
All right, let's look at new construction. That's looking pretty strong still. 56.90% of the homes out there under contract. Last week, it was that was 57.34. So a little bit of a dip, but nothing that I would consider a drop. It's pretty flat there. So still going strong. Would love for some builders to get some more homes built. You know, that'll help with the inventory.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, looking at condos. Okay, so here, this one, you know, again, still very strong. We're about to be a couple of more days. We're going to be in November, right? And look at how many condos are pending right now, Greg. Almost 36%. Yeah. So we're waiting for the seasonality of this industry to kick in, and it's just not kicking in. There's just so much demand and so much momentum that it's not slowing it down, even with the seasonality coming into play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's impressive.
And let's look at the oceanfront real quick. Same thing there, 22.82. It actually went up from last week. So 350 condos on the contract right now. Last week it was 332. So even the oceanfront, you know, we're not seeing a big dip like we thought we would this time of year. And that's mostly driven by not that more condos are selling. It's just not enough inventories hitting the market.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I put on a condo just 2 days ago and got 2 offers within 24 hours. Mm-hmm. One of them full price, cash, sight unseen, without a contingency of even seeing it. That's, again, there's a unique advantage. Like the buyer was like willing to say, okay, I will base it on the pictures and the video that my agent took. I'll go ahead and buy it and not even make it contingent upon physically seeing the property and pay full price. I
had an oceanfront condo last week get multiple offers in the first 2 days on the market, mm-hmm. and it didn't appraise, and the buyer still chose to pay the difference.
Yeah. Take advantage of it if you're thinking about selling. Take advantage of it. Things like this don't last forever. That's why we're making a big deal out of it. It's because these things usually only happen in small chunks of time.
And here's the land market: 447 on the contract. Last week it was 444, 16.89% last week, 17.05. So still holding strong there on the land as well. So pretty much across the board, inventory is really tight. Demand is still high out there. So really nothing has changed as far as the strength of the market right now.
Great. Well, man, I appreciate the report. So I think next week will be interesting if you do that, and maybe also, maybe some data on price points. Okay, so for the buyer, that's at the 400 to 500 versus the 300 to 400 and the 200 to 300. Those price points, or 500 and above, just to share. Okay, here's where the inventory levels are on each one of those segments, because as we just said, that there's only so many homes in Myrtle Beach, and then there's less homes in Carolina Forest. Well, then you can break, then that same buyer then has a price point. Maybe their price point is 300,000 to 350,000. So then it's like you narrow it down again, and that's where it becomes there's only 4 homes or only 5 homes for them to choose from.
Absolutely.
Well, good. Well, Abe, thank you so much for that data. I think this was excellent again. And for those of you that are tuning in consistently, thank you. Again, you can reach Abe or I. There's our telephone numbers. It's Greg Harrelson and Abe Safa, Century 21, the Harrelson Group. Call any one of us, either one of us. We'd love to help you, whether we help you buy, sell, or just help you gather some information for various reasons. Maybe you're trying to, you want to see if what your property's value is because you're wondering if you're paying too much property tax. We can give you valuations and things like that you can use in determining whether or not you should appeal your property taxes. So use us as a resource. Use this as a resource, even if you're not thinking about buying or selling right now. Abe, thank you so much, and we'll talk soon.
Enjoy it, Greg.